Holy crap, they did a one more thing. They pulled the Apple. RJ confirmed to be the next Steve Jobs. I think we all know where this is going. But holy crap, yeah, I didn't expect there to be that many surprises. Maybe all of the Tesla event letdowns have tempered my expectations, but not only did Rivian unveil the R2, by the way, not the R2S, it's just called R2 and that's it, but they also unveiled the R3, which in my opinion is far more exciting, far more interesting because it wasn't leaked, it wasn't rumored at all. No one really saw this coming, and I'm gonna talk about that first, honestly, because I think that's far more interesting. It's basically Rivian's first take at a crossover, not quite SUV. It's a bit shorter, it's a bit tighter, and it has more of a sloped off back design. There's something about it that feels very retro. I don't know, it has kind of a 80s vibe to it, and I'm digging it personally. As someone who wanted Rivian to go more aerodynamic, and as someone who was kind of against this whole boxy car design trend, I couldn't be more excited for the fact that Rivian is working on a much smaller vehicle that has a more sloped design. So yes, it sacrifices a little bit on storage space, but it's supposed to be even cheaper than the R2 is, which means the R3 is essentially Rivian's equivalent of a Model 3. Of course, it'd be pretty weird for Rivian to ever make a sedan because they're all about adventuring and accessories and biking and camping. They needed it to be at least a little bit good at off-roading and that kind of thing. But yeah, R3 by far favorite Rivian, no question about it. I can't wait to learn more about this. They didn't give us too much in regards to the pricing. They just kind of unveiled it and teased it, but we know it's going to be cheaper than the R2 for sure, and my guess is more efficient, and I'm the efficiency guy, so I'm very excited for both the vehicles Rivian announced today. By the way, very eloquently announced by RJ Scaringe. The keynote was very short, sweet, concise, to the point. Didn't get into a lot of nitty-gritty details, but I'm sure they've got a lot of time to kill before the actual deliveries begin in 2026. But RJ also mentioned they're going to start building the R2 vehicles at their existing plant in Normal, Illinois, which is actually a great decision because the Georgia plant, you know, it's coming along, but they're still very early in the construction process. So I think that was a wise decision. Their plant at Normal is already pretty big and has lots of space. Not to mention, after the R2 unveiling today, I kind of wonder if a lot of people are not going to be interested in the R1S anymore. So let's talk more about the R2 then, because we actually have a bit more stats to go along with it. I was happy to hear that they plan on doing 3 different powertrain options, so that does sound kind of complicated for the factory floor, but I was just happy anytime I hear about the concept of a single motor. Everybody wants dual motor these days, and I know a ton of Rivian customers that are never going off-road. They just like the storage, they like the brand, they like RJ, they like what Rivian stands for and all that, and I think single motor will be perfectly fine. I assume the cheapest one is probably going to be single motor, but of course they'll have a dual motor option and a tri-motor option, which they say is going to go 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds, which is kind of nuts for a vehicle like this, but of course I would expect nothing less. I also just realized Rivian has never done a tri-motor system before. I forgot that you could do tri-motor. I was just so focused on dual and quad that, oh yeah, why not throw a tri-motor in there at the same time? But most of the leaks about the R2 vehicle seem to be legit, at least as far as the dimensions. I compared Rivian's website to the leaks we talked about in the video I did a couple days ago. About 67 inches tall, about 185 inches long, making it noticeably smaller than the R1S, but by no means a small car. I do think it would be adaptable to other markets a lot more so than the R1S, which is a bit more American sized, but they made so many great design choices, both with the exterior and interior, with only one that really bothers me, which I'll get to, so you gotta keep waiting. But because I'm so excited and happy for the company, let's start with the front row of seats, okay? So they still have a driver display. They seem to have streamlined the steering wheel. It looks a lot less complicated now. Also, apparently there's a lot more haptic feedback to go with these scroll wheels. I can't wait to try those out. They look really satisfying and those dials look really big. But also it seems like they've widened the space above the steering wheel to make it easier to see the driver display, which is good. Also, there's no more Bluetooth speaker lantern like there is in the R1. There's just a nice little drawer. But while the Bluetooth speaker didn't make the cut, Rivian is doubling down on the flashlight. So yeah, they still want to accommodate for a flashlight in the door, but I'm guessing it's not the same kind of cells in the battery pack, because RJ also said that they're switching to a new battery dimension for the R2 and R3 vehicles, which is not 2170, it's not 4680, but it's 4695? Never heard of this cell form factor before. I don't think Rivian is manufacturing their own cells, but I'm guessing because they're a large company and they have vehicles in production, they probably have a supplier picked out already. They didn't talk much about the supplier, but yeah, they're making cells that have the same diameter as the 4680s that Teslas are using. but they just get a little bit taller. Not that it's a measuring contest, but Rivian's is, you know, just a little bit bigger. And of course, thanks to that larger form factor, they said this can be a structural battery pack, which should help with the simplicity of manufacturing, make the vehicle a bit lighter weight, more efficient. So I'm excited to hear more about these cells, but yeah, I don't know who's making them. Probably Panasonic or Samsung or something, but first time I've heard of Rivian using a different cell. They've always used 2170 cells in the R1 vehicle. And as far as range goes, they kept it, I think, intentionally vague, likely to give themselves some wiggle room in the future before they decide on whether or not they want to go with LFP batteries or how many cells they want to put in the Rivian. But they just said that no matter which powertrain option you choose, single, dual, or tri, all of them can go over 300 miles on a charge. That sounds great, and I'm very happy to hear that, but I'm confused if Rivian is saying that there will be no lower range options, like you can't get a battery pack with under 300 miles of range. They're not entirely clear. RJ actually confirmed in Marquez's autofocus video that the base model will be a lower range option, 270 miles. So there you go. In order to get the vehicle cheap enough to reach the $45,000 starting price that they're targeting for the R2, I would hope that they have some options for smaller battery packs, but over 300 is great, of course. They didn't talk much about any higher voltage architectures, but I assume they would have similar charging characteristics to the R1 vehicles. If not, hopefully better, likely around 250 kilowatts or something like that. But that brings me to kind of the weirdest decision of the R2 that I would like to hear more of defense of. They relocated the charge port, and you can tell with this front grille, it's a lot more simple and clean looking than the R1 front grills. Part of that is, of course, because there's no more charge port on the front, but they moved it to the passenger side rear, which I just do not understand. I'm sorry. Someone needs to explain it to me. I mean, I guess if you go to a Rivian Adventure Network charger, that's the best way to relocate it and still have the cable reach, but I think everybody's on board the NACS train and is in favor of relocating the charge port so that you can go to any V3 supercharger and just pull in and plug in and know that the cable will reach and know that you're not occupying two stalls. Putting it to the passenger rear doesn't really fix that problem, so production hasn't started yet. There's still time, Rivian, for you to change your mind. Why the heck do you want to put it on the back? I feel like that's worse for towing. It's worse for V3 supercharger capability, and I just don't understand why they did that. But hopefully there's more V4 superchargers so we don't have to worry about how you park and the cable can just reach either way. But I always found Rivian Adventure Network chargers to have cables that were long enough to reach either side. So Rivian just put it on the passenger side front so it's the most compatible with superchargers and Adventure Network chargers, or put it on the driver's side rear like a Tesla so that you don't have to worry about parking and cable length and that kind of thing. But that's pretty much my only real complaint here, because the interior still looks pretty luxurious. There's still perforation on the seats. I'm not sure if they're ventilated, but they're at least perforated, and current R1 vehicles don't have glove boxes. Well, the R2 has double. So there's a storage space beneath the center display and one for the passenger. That's awesome. My wife is gonna love that. She's always a fan of more storage options and glove boxes and that kind of thing. But also they put a lot of time and attention into the back of the R2 with the rear window dropping all the way, and it doesn't have that split opening method like the R1S does, so there's not really a mini tailgate, but it does seem to open itself all the way, and again, you can access all of the storage on the inside without completely opening the hatch thanks to that window rolling down. Also, the rear quarter windows pop out a little bit, which is kind of like my family car I had growing up, the Trailblazer. You could pop out those little windows on the back, and RJ said that helps with aerodynamics a little bit, so I guess if you're really an efficiency nut, you can just leave the windows in the back of the car open at all times. But one feature that I'm desperately in love with that I want to see brought to all vehicles, and I'm already scared that they're not going to bring this into production, so please, Rivian, make sure you bring this to the R2 when you reach it. But I love the fact that you can fold the front row seats down and the second row seats down to be completely flat. Oh my god, that's going to be so nice for car camping. As someone who has slept in my car on multiple occasions, that frees up a ton of storage space, and you could throw an air mattress back there and just have room for days. And you still got a front trunk. Lots of space up there for your stuff, and then the back seats can all fold down, and the front seats can fold down, make room for a ton of leg room. The best car camping experience. Still a glass roof, of course. So just, oh my god, so much attention to detail here, and still at the same time looks a lot more streamlined. Doesn't look as complicated to manufacture, which I think is good because these vehicles are rocking a lot of amazing specs. It's just a question of, can you build these things profitably? And that's a big concern of mine. There's little things that I think were smart, like not having a rear display anymore. Now they just have vents and standard buttons for heating the seats and unlocking the doors and that kind of thing. I hope there's more of that under the hood to keep manufacturing simple and clean. They didn't really dive much more into details on how they're going to make this more cost effective than the R1, which they're still losing a ton of money on. I do think a lot of people are now sold on the vision and the brand. You can reserve an R2 starting today. You cannot reserve the R3, unfortunately, which is pretty much the only one I would consider reserving. I don't know. There might be a lot of Osborne effect going on here, where the R2 is so cool with that rear window dropping, the lower price starting at $45,000, and I believe that's before the federal tax credit. So we could be talking about a Rivian that's well under $40,000. Now, bring the R3 into the picture. Oh my god. The main reason I'm excited for the R3 is because it probably doesn't require as large of a battery pack in order to achieve comparable range, and maybe they're comfortable putting the LFP battery packs in the R3 or something, but I don't know. I just am in love with this new lineup they demoed. Also showed off the R3X, which is going to be tri-motor and just have all of this great off-roading performance. I love the colored accents they put on the R3X and the updated rugged interior. So many great design choices made here. Such a great electric vehicle event. My only concern is, will the company make it? You know, because R1 vehicles are not terribly profitable, and now knowing that these vehicles are going to launch in the first half of 2026, I wouldn't buy an R1. I'm sorry. I mean, it's good, I guess, that they didn't unveil an R2T or, you know, a mini pickup truck of any kind, because that kind of keeps the demand flowing for the R1T, because people don't feel like there's another one around the corner. But at least as far as the R1S goes, heck no. R1S is definitely not worth it, knowing that the R2 and R3 are around the corner. The only reason to go with the R1S is if you want air suspension, because the R2 and R3 have coil suspension, and if you want 7 seats, which a lot of people I know who bought the R1S were not really buying it for the 7 seats. They just wanted an SUV. They wanted the tighter wheelbase, and there's some tax advantages to it being an SUV versus a truck. I really hope Rivian did not kill the demand for the best-selling product. If you disagree with me and say, oh no, Drew, I still want an R1S, or I know a bunch of people that would still choose an R1S over these vehicles, please, you know, tell me that. I need that reassurance right now, because I really want Rivian to make it, more so now than ever. Seeing them adopt NACS, knowing that they have the supercharger access, seeing that they're going with these kind of retro designs that still can have a lot of storage space, but be a lot more affordable for the masses. And I'm sure overseas, there's going to be a ton of demand for vehicles like the R3. Oh God, please do not let this company go bankrupt. They've got such cool products with such great design schemes, and I think a lot of people are gonna love these things. But what did you guys think? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.